This is Duke University.
Welcome to Duke University. I'm Gennifer Weisenfeld from the Department of Art, Art History, and Visual Studies, and it's my pleasure to be here in conversation with our guest from the University of Tokyo, Professor Shunya Yoshimi. Professor Yoshimi is a specialist in Japanese urban history, in social history, media history, and cultural studies. So it's a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure for me too.
So you recently completed a two-part MOOC, a massive online course titled Visualizing Postwar Tokyo.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the origins of the class and what some of the objectives were in using Tokyo as a city to teach about Japanese history.
Yes. As you know, Tokyo is a very large city because Tokyo has a 13 million population. And Tokyo has already the big city from Edo era, 17th or 18th century.
Right.
But the city has a kind of a disaster in many times because in 1923 it was crashed because of the Great Kanto earthquake. And after that, in 1945, Tokyo was almost burned out by American bombing. But after that, Tokyo recovered very rapidly and it became the global city. And this process was documented or taken by photograph and documentary films and TV programs in many ways. So in visual archive or TV archive, we have many such kind of the document of this history. I think the future university can use or can reuse these kind of the archive documents much and much more. So in this MOOC, what I want to do was to reuse all of these, not all, but many of these very important and very impressive archived films and programs to understand the history of Tokyo visually. So one of the meaning of this visualizing Tokyo is to use such kind of visual materials for teaching purpose.
And how do you think the visual particularly changes the nature of the way we see the city? Yesterday you gave a public lecture and you spoke a lot about the gaze and the idea of the authoritarian gaze, the gaze of the occupation, the gaze of the Japanese imperial subject, citizen occupied. I wonder how the images that you're looking at, the documentary images, invoke vision.
Yes. Because visualizing Tokyo has two meanings, or visualizing in this title has two meanings. One is, as I explained, I want to use many visual materials because Tokyo was visualized in photograph and documentary films and so on. But on the other hand, this visualizing are so much related with politics of gazing or politics or power formation and relationship. Because, for example, after 1945, the American occupation army brings so many cameras and so many the movie films and movie set. So they took so many pictures and scenes in Japan. So there's many documents in which the American photographer come to Japan and they took pictures of the Showa Emperor and other children on the street and homeless people on the street and many things. So in that sense, American gaze watched and documented post-war Japan in occupation era. And more than that, in the field of sociology and social survey, there are many social survey and sociology and also documentary films took pictures and document about poor people and marginal people. So all of this process include not only documentation but also some kind of the discipline or some kind of the visualizing the poor people from the perspective of power or from a ruling perspective.
And you mentioned this visualizing or making visible the margins and how not only people in the slums and people who are homeless, but all kinds of displaced people were identifying with the city and the city being reborn, but yet a place of perhaps a den of iniquity and this sense of the city being of potentially moral, being very complicated and potentially of moral, compromised morals. And so that idea of the subjectivity of the Tokyo resident and the city was very interesting, the way you put those two together in documentaries, and that was clearly visualized.
Yes, because many of the documentary films include the visualizing practice by the people who was visualized. It's a very complicated, but in Tokyo City, there's a big population, and many poor people visualized by, for example, the occupation army or sociologists in social survey in municipal government, or other how to say, the eye from the above. But at the same time, in some cases, those poor people and marginal people try to visualize or try to gaze against or against the people who try to visualize them. So the activity of the visualizing.
So they're meeting the gaze of the authorities.
Yes, so it's interactive. And some documentary films, actually, I showed it yesterday. So actually those documentary films try to focus on this kind of the poor people or marginal people's practice to look back the people who try to visualize them.
So there's this inherent power relationship back and forth. Speaking of the state and state types of power and authority, one of the important points and events that you discuss in the MOOC is the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, which was such a critical turning point for Japan, both in terms of normalizing its status in international relations, but re-emerging after the war economically, politically. You mentioned several things that transformed Tokyo in preparation for the Olympics. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that.
You're talking about the Olympics 2020?
No, for 64, but then 64. I'd like to follow up and ask about 2020 because it's a very different context now than it was in 64.
64, because the Tokyo Olympics game in 1964 was a turning point, a very important point of Japanese economic growth. So there's a very strong similarity between the Tokyo Olympic Games and the Seoul Olympic Game in 1988 and the Beijing Olympic Game in 2008. Because all of these three Olympic Games was held exactly the moment when the national economy started the rapid growth. So because Japanese economy started to grow very rapidly from late 1950s or early 1960s. And Tokyo Olympic Games was a symbolic image of Japanese economic growth. So there's a very strong relationship with that kind of the national pride and the national identity.
So you get the inauguration of the Shinkansen, the bullet train, and major transportation infrastructure, the highway system. What were some of the other things that were put online for the 1964 Olympics?
The other very important thing about Tokyo Olympic Game in 1964 is after the Tokyo Olympic Game in 1964, the cultural center of Tokyo moved from northeast to southwest. Because before the 1950s, the many of the important cultural event and also the cultural function was concentrated in relatively northeast, including Asakusa or Ginza or Taitoku or Bunkyoku, Sumidaku, in the northeast area, Shitamachi area, downtown areas. But after the Olympic game, major function of the urban function or urban culture of the culture core of Tokyo moved to southwest, including Roppongi, Shibuya, Shinjuku, Yoyogi,
and that was in relation to these major Olympic facilities that were built.
Yes, exactly. Because during the Olympic game, the Yoyogi Olympic Stadium was built, and also Aoyama Street it became the main street of Tokyo. New Tokyo culture was built, and highway, the express highway was built. All the facility was very much concentrated on these areas. And the other important thing is, for example, your Olympic Stadium had been the military field in prior period. Even the national stadium in Aoyama had been the military field until early 20th century. So there's a, the general tendency in which the military field changed to occupied area by American US, and then after the returning of this occupied area,
it was reclaimed. Yes. So in a sense, the Japanese state is reoccupying the occupation areas to reclaim them for as national space.
Yeah, national space.
It's very
for
symbolic
sport.
For sport.
Yeah. So there's a very clear, how to say, very clear change from
trajectory from
military to sports.
Right.
And sports became one of the most important symbolic field for the nationals.
Symbolic martial activities.
Yes,
interesting. Well, I know it's taking you far into the future and it's hard to foresee what's going to happen, but you mentioned that the Tokyo Olympics and all of the other Olympics that have been in Asia were at times of exponential growth.
Yes.
But we're looking to 2020 for Tokyo to host the Olympics again, and as you know, the economy has been shrinking, as has the population, and we're also on the heels of 3/11 of the triple disaster of Fukushima. So I wonder, how do you see 2020 being a different kind of Olympics, a different kind of Tokyo Olympics? Will it transform the city, you think, or will it?
I think because, as you said, because Tokyo Olympics game in 1964 was held when the economy grows. Economy is rapidly experiencing rapid growth. But Tokyo Olympics games, Tokyo Olympics in 2020 might be held when the economy is shrinking and population is shrinking and so on. So we need to change our idea of Olympic game totally, because maybe I think what we have to do in Tokyo Olympic game 2020 should be, we try to recover, or we try to revitalize what we lost after 1964. For example, as I said, northeast area of Tokyo has lost in central, function or culture function which they had beforehand. So, for example, how about to promote the new productivity or cultural productivity of these areas?
In these neighborhoods, in the Shitamachi, the low city area.
Yeah, those areas. So one of the projects I try to do is I want to revitalize, or renovate, and also try to make a new integration of culture in this area, including Ueno and Hongo and Jinbocho and Akihabara and Yoshimi, all of these Shitamachi areas and downtown north areas, because this area, it has a huge heritage, cultural heritage in the history of Tokyo. So museum and the Edo culture and academic facilities and also the anime and manga and publishing culture. So many such kind of the cultural heritage they have. So we have some people, other people want to change rapid expressway, because in 1964 the rapid expressway, or say the highway, had built on the canal.
Right. So it covered over all of this
all
canals.
the river and canals.
So,
because they want to pursue the speed and functionality in 1964. But we need to change our idea, and we need to change, and we need to think about more cultural continuity and sustainability in the city.
So it sounds like 2020 could be moving towards Tokyo as a culture city,
yes.
Tokyo as a city of lifestyle and tradition,
yes, exactly.
and not of technology, high growth, and then maybe about a long history of sustainable practices,
yes, yes.
Even in reclaiming the waterways,
yes.
which were covered over in
yes,
'64,
yes.
which fundamentally changed the look of the city.
Yes.
It really changed Tokyo
yes.
from the Venice of the East.
Yes, yes.
So
From west to east.
Right,
yes,
and
yes.
from west to
because,
east. And
because our society is now changing from the society of development and society of increasing toward society of the sustainability and the society of the recycling, especially.
Yes.
So how we can recycle many of what we had, how we can recycle our heritage and our culture and our, how to say, history. So in that sense, we need to think about the future of the 2020 in very different way from the 1960s.
Well, it seems like it's very appropriate for Tokyo, the city, the resilient city
yes.
that has consistently rebuilt
yes.
in this cyclical mode, to be the symbol of sustainability in 2020.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Welcome.
This has been very interesting.
Welcome. Thank you very much.